Break Fix Podcast is all about capturing the living history of people from all over the autosphere, from wrench turners and racers to artists, authors, designers, and everything in between. Our goal is to inspire a new generation of petrol heads that wonder, how did they get that job or become that person? The road to success is paved by all of us because everyone has a story.
Tonight's guest founded the Slot Mods brand in 2007 and serves in the dual role of both designer and lead artist for each commissioned project. Every Slot Mods track bears David Beatty's signature passion, artistry, and meticulous attention to detail. But did you know that David grew up in a suburb of Detroit with 10 siblings, one who worked for McLaren's Can-Am team? He's a fan of all things motorsports, including Formula One, NASCAR, and sports car racing. His love of auto racing began when Peter Revson's Can-Am car appeared on a car hauler in the family's driveway. And he's here tonight to chat with us about how he turned his passion for slot car racing into a second career. And with that, let's welcome David to Break Fix.
Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here.
And joining me tonight is William Ross, who you might remember from MPN's Ferrari Marketplace podcast and other fine programming that we have here on the network. Welcome back, William.
Hey, it's awesome to be here. It's going to be a fun one tonight. Just so you guys know, listening, that I actually was blessed to be able to tour David's studio, which was fantastic. It's really cool. And if you haven't seen the video, check out the video too, the tour, because it's really, really cool.
Like all good Break Fix stories, there's a superhero origin. 10 brothers and sisters. You got to take us back to Motown and how this all got started. It starts with your brother?
Back in the early 70s, I was only 9 or 10 years old. My brother, Leo, was working for McLaren. He was kind of a gopher, tire guy and such like that here in Livonia, Michigan. We were watching Speed Racer and really enjoying that. And we had slot car tracks and things like that. But with him working for McLaren, coming home and going out on the road, and then with the Peter Revson car on the car hauler, coming back from Road America, was really kind of like the aha moment. And it was super cool. We just really wanted to ride the pit bikes because we had an acre of land. You know, we're like animals. We just all wanted to get on the bikes. And he's like, hey, chill out. Seeing Peter's car there, that was really impressive. From that comes the story of us getting the burned out tires off the truck and putting them in our garage. And we had, all 4 of them. We like to roll them around and they were big. We were little. That was kind of my introduction. And one day my dad came out and said, we're going to clean the garage and I want those tires thrown to the road. We rolled them out there thinking, okay, yeah, we're just going to throw them away. You can see the cords sticking through them and such. And now I think back and I go, God, I wish I had those in my office. And, it's just one of those things when you're in the moment, you're not really thinking about it. As he went on the road and, he'd come back and we'd always talk about Speed Racer and talk about racing. And I believe he gave my brother and I this snowmobile slot car set. And he also got us a Bachman Turner Overdrive album, which is really cool for Christmas. Something else.
Little BTO.
Yeah. We started watching the Indy races because he was working for, I think it was Gordon Johncock was driving for McLaren, but I believe he was the driver in the Indy series for McLaren at the time. He was in the music business after that, but being able to go to McLaren with him one day was super cool. When I had the chance to go pre-COVID to a reunion and the dynamometer is still in the room and it was really a small place. So it was really kind of cool to see some of the guys who worked with him.
Dave, how old was your brother at that time?
19 or 20.
Oh, that's it. Oh, wow. He was young.
Yeah. He was out on the road and, I have this great picture of he came home and it's my birthday and there's a cake and he's in his McLaren shirt. We're all sitting there around the table. It was pretty cool.
As adults, we race slot cars, but as kids, we played with slot cars. It's very different. So that snowmobile set, was that the genesis of your getting into slot car racing, or were you already playing with slot cars before that point?
We were playing with slot cars before that point because I have 6 brothers. They were racing 124 scale, big Strombecker 124 cars in the house. It got down to where we were just racing chassis. The bodies and such were torn off. And so the way our house was set up, you could go in a complete H through all the rooms and come around. So we'd have our corner marshals and we'd host races. They would humor us. And I have a twin brother, and he's actually more of a car guy than myself. So that's when we were like racing slot cars in our minds. And then when we got the snowmobile thing, that was more of a toyish. It was kind of fun. They didn't go fast. And to your point, Eric, we weren't really racing. We were more or less playing with them. And so with life, as it changes, and I started finding myself watching more Formula One, I was enjoying Indy and all that kind of thing. And it was when I got older, and I would say when I turned 45, 6, or 48-ish is when I had a franchise that I was running and I was kind of bored. And I said to my wife, I got a Hammacher Schlemmer Christmas catalog. It's a little green. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Love that catalog. That thing was great.
Yes. Yeah, it was like a Brookstone or one of those kind of things. In there, I said, hey, I'd like a slot car track for Christmas. And I showed my wife it, and it was Christmas morning, and I got up and I was all excited, and there was no slot car track set there for me. I was kind of bummed out. And then she went down the hall and she came out and she gave it to me, and I was like, oh, yes. And I looked at it, I'm like, oh, one of the 132nd set, but she got me the 143rd. I couldn't show that I wanted the bigger track. I went downstairs, we set it up on the floor, and I was down there on my hands and knees and racing. And I was like, I felt physically too old to be on the floor racing. And so over the course of the next 4 months, I purchased over 120 feet of plastic track, went to 132nd. Half of my basement was all just plastic track. And then I was racing with my brothers and a couple of my neighbors. So I would say my late 40s when I really re-engaged with the hobby of slot car racing and collecting.
There's a huge gap there between little David playing with the snowmobile slot cars and, let's say, 50-year-old David racing with slot cars. So you mentioned that you had a franchise in between. Now in your second career as the founder of Slot Mods, its chief designer and artist and things like that, did you go to school for like industrial design or for design in general, graphic arts? Like, what is your background and how did you take your original career or your schooling and turn it into this second career?
Number one, I didn't graduate from high school. Number two, I thought there was a great social scene. So I was really good at that, but you don't get graded for that. And I have no shame in that. I always felt more artistic. I'm a self-taught drummer. So at the age of 20, I got a record contract with a band out of Florida. So I moved to Key West for a short period of time. And some of the members had been backup musicians in ABBA and bands like that. So I was a self-taught drummer because my brother Leo, after he went from the racing, he went to work for a road manager for like Alice Cooper, Peter Frampton, Procol Harum. I was around a lot of music and I wanted to be a drummer. So there was a big chunk of my life there that now I was a drummer. I was playing around in Detroit, late 70s, early 80s, all, in the punk bars and new wave. So I really wanted to make it music. So that's where I kind of turned away from the racing, but I was still watching Formula One, which I really enjoyed. So that gap there, I was just trying to find myself in life, because I was kind of like a lost soul a little bit. So I really turned to music, but I was also always had like an entrepreneurial spirit. I was in sales and we drive down this road. I mean, it's like our main strip, Gratiot. Tell my daughter, people used to cruise Gratiot back in the 70s and 60s here, just like Woodward, but they'd cruise Gratiot. And there's all these little buildings, and I told her, I said, I used to go and knock on every one of these doors and try and sell people printing because that's what I was into. So I learned to be quick on my feet and talking about things. And she's like, oh, how many jobs did you have? And I said, well, because I kept taking different jobs in different fields. And I just told her, I said, Mads, your dad can interview really well, but I get smoked out about 6 months later. So then I'd move on. But nothing really held my attention. I always liked old toys. And so that kind of like had me going in the music part. But I was driven, being the youngest of 11. My dad worked 2 jobs. There was a lot of struggle in there, but we always had holiday gifts and things like that. But I wanted to kind of, I don't know, say break the mold. When I saw the movie Wall Street, good or bad, it had this influence on me. And I had the blue suit and I wanted to go sell and didn't have the brains for it. But to answer your question, I mean, there was young David having fun with slot cars and then the music and playing out and getting the really great opportunities there to then going, okay, what am I really going to do with my life? I was in a car accident in 1992 that wiped out my memory for 6 months. I could remember like an old episode of Gilligan's Island, but if you just asked me what I had for dinner yesterday, I wouldn't remember. It was kind of crazy. I recovered for over a year, but after that accident, like my family and friends and everybody where I am today, they like said, man, what did that accident do to you? Because my head went through the side window. And I said, I don't know, but I haven't been the same since. And thank God, because here's what I'm doing. Not that I thought, oh, geez, life is short. It was just like, I want to do something. I want to do something. The economy crashed here in 2008. Prior to that, like a year or two before that, my wife had gotten me that slot car set by Carrera. From playing with the slot car set I got for Christmas and then developing that, I met somebody and they said, hey, there's a guy in Dearborn, which is out by Ford Motor Company. He has this large wooden slot car track. You should go there. And I'm like, yeah, I'd like to meet him. So I finagled an invitation and I went there and I took him a gift. I had this Mobile Oil racing shirt and his name is Jimmy Addard. And he's kind of my mentor from the early days. And the way he talks is like, oh, hey, Dave, thanks. He's got a really high voice. He goes, no one's ever given me a shirt. I'm like, well, I always like to bring a gift. He and I bonded really quick. His track is phenomenal. It's called the North Line Raceway. And I said, boy, I'd like to build one of these. And he goes, yeah, everyone says that. And I said, no, really, I want to build one of these. Jimmy came out, we measured in my basement. Okay, 18 by 18, we can fit a track. And so he comes over and I got the wood and he goes, well, where are your tools? And I go, what tools? And I was like, it was a hammer and a screwdriver. And he's like, come on. So the next week he brought over his tools and table saw and we started cutting things outside and really created a bond. And I learned a lot from him. But to that point, there was a lot of gentlemen who lost their jobs here in the automotive industry. And there was about 6 other gentlemen. And so they would come over every 2 weeks and help me build out this big wooden slot car track. And then we'd host races. And that's when I got into racing because Jimmy would hold these big races. And then I'd have races with 12 guys over. My track raced 6 cars. And it was a great camaraderie. And at that time, I wasn't really thinking about this can become a business. It was just something I was doing. I was an operations manager at a large exhibit and display company. But then when I lost my job, prior to that, I was trying to sell this do-it-yourself 4x16 kit, and I showed William the picture of my daughter and I in the hobby shop that I went to after losing my job, thinking, what am I going to do? And then I thought, I love slot car racing. I think there's people out there who will enjoy what I'm doing at this larger level or even a small level, just to get people back into the hobby. And that's what I was really driven by. I never thought, I'm not making a lot of money, so I'm not going to say I'm going to make all this money, because that really wasn't the vision. It was more about getting this grassroots movement of bringing friends and families together through the joys of slot car racing, because that's what I was experiencing with my friends during this difficult time in building this track and racing. I was kind of lost, but then I thought, okay, I'm going to try to sell these tracks. I went to a hobby shop. The gentleman said, hey, you know what? I'll let you set up an aisle 6. So I set up a track that I routed on the side of my garage, a true story. And I took it there, set it up. My young daughter, Madeline, was with me. And I was just sitting there and people would come by and go, oh, wow, what's this? And I'd say, oh, there's slot cars, and the store was busy. So a lot of times they thought I was like one of the stock boys. So I'd start helping them and picking out slot cars. Oh, yeah, here's a good one for you. Through that, I met a gentleman. He came in and he goes, oh, everyone's got a high voice in my world, I guess. Oh, but not really. He said, this is really interesting. And he took my card and he said, Dave, you should print some cards and leave them up at AutoZone, which is in the parts store, which is a really nice static model shop, magazine store on Woodward in Birmingham. And a lot of the heavy hitters, Ford Motor and such, go there to get die-cast cars. And it's called Past Diners. So I set some cards out there. And in doing so, a gentleman picked up my card and he called me and said, hey, I'm interested in the slot car track. And I said, well, sure, come on over, because he had heard about mine, which was called Legends. And he saw my track and he was like, holy shit, this is amazing, And I said, hey. So I started saying, okay, well, here's these 4x16s that I sell. And he goes, no, how much for something like this? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And I said, I can't build you anything this big, which was 8x18, let's just say. And he goes, what about a third? And I thought, geez, I said, $4,000. And he goes, all right, let's do it. And also I'm like, wow, $4,000. I'm leaning against my dryer in the basement thinking this guy's going to actually pay me money to do this. Went out to his house and he and his wife were so excited. It was one of the coolest experiences because it was my first sale. I took it in my Dodge Caravan over there and installed it, and they still have it. And Jimmy actually came out and helped me build it. And as I was building it, I started getting the idea that, man, slot mods could be something much bigger than just these 4x16 tracks. And I should really think about doing more of a scenic track. So I was working on that track. And that's when the light went off about building these big tracks for private clients. As I was finishing up that track, I took an ad out in Garage Style magazine, just on a whim, that said custom slot car tracks and things like that. They reached out to me and they said, hey, the Pebble Beach Concourse is coming up, and could you build us the Pebble Beach Raceway, which it was to be raced through the forest? And I said, sure. So borrowed 10 grand that I didn't have from my friend and said, this is all I need. I'm going to build this track. I'm going to California. As I was building that track, I got an email from Jim Farley, Ford Motor Company president. Back then, he was the global marketing president. I didn't know who he was. And so I had to Google him. And he was like the golden boy of Lexus before he came to Ford. And I'm like, oh, wow, Jim Farley wants me to build him a track. He said, hey, David, can you come out to my house? And I said, well, sure. So went out to his house, got to meet him. He wanted Laguna Seca because he and his wife used to go out there and watch races when they were dating and such. And so I started building him that track, which now I couldn't really work at my house. So I had to go to a friend's building who was kind of like a brother-in-law to me, rent a space from him, rented it. I think it was $100 a month, but it was probably 15 feet by 25 feet wide. So I could just build one thing in there. So I started working on Jim's track in there. And I was also working on the Pebble Beach track.
But what year was that?
That was 2010, 11,
Okay.
right around there. So it was early on. There was a lot going on because I was trying to grow the business and try to really kind of figure out what am I doing with this? Where do I want to go? And how do I do this by myself? And Jimmy would still come around, but I had another guy that I was actually able to pay to work with me. Jim mentioned something about possibly a Ford Motor track. And at that time, I couldn't even imagine. I'm like, let me just build these little tracks. And for me, it wasn't little. It was like 10 by maybe 12. We shoehorned it into his basement. It was really cool. And he was really happy. But the actual launching point would have been when I went to Pebble Beach and I was able to set up in the retro automobile exhibit, and Gooding Auction agreed to auction off the track so I could get my money back and then I could come home and such like that. So the track went up for auction. But in the meantime, someone said, hey, Jay Leno's in the tent. And I said, oh, that's cool. And then his producer came over and he's looking around. He goes, man, this is really cool. He goes, what's your story? And so I just told him, I said, yeah, I'm David Beatty. I'm from Detroit. I made this track, blah, 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 and kind of mentioned about my job a little bit. And he goes, hey, I think Jay will dig this. So then, Jay's walking through, hey, everybody, blah, blah, blah. He comes over, he goes, whoa, what's this? And so, next thing he goes, let's do a segment. Right then and there, Jay and I are talking and he's asking me about the track. And I said, oh, yeah, I'm building one for Jim Farley. And he's like, oh, yeah, Jim Farley, Ford Motor. It was really exciting because, I got to meet Jay, and then there was other celebrities that I got to race slot cars with. And one of the coolest thing was they had a VIP dinner that I took this track to. It was at some estate, and I'm sitting there manning the track, and Sterling Moss came up to the track. And I'm like, oh, man, this is awesome. I just saw him at the racetrack because I would go over there during the day, sneak away, and they were racing the historics. He got in an accident. So he was kind of in this wheelchair. Someone was helping him. So he came rolling up, literally, because he's in a wheelchair. I had his Mercedes going around. I think it's when he raced at Targa Florio or something. He's like, oh, that's my car. And then I just handed the controller to him and he was just sitting there squeezing it. It was just really a special moment. One of the things that you can Google Sterling Moss racing slot cars, and they have this really cool black and white video of he and his wife laying on the floor and they're racing slot cars. And his dad is carving the trophy. And he's talking about his love of slot cars. And it's about 10 minutes long. He was very passionate about slot cars. That was really a highlight of that event. And the track sold for $29,000 during the auction. So that gave me an idea of what these things were worth. And while I was there, I met people from Robb Report. And then in a blink of an eye, I was gift of the season in Robb Report. Just kind of like, hey, David, what can you offer us? And I'm like, well, I'm building this other track that I was taking to concourse here at Meadowbrook in Detroit. So much was happening, but before I knew it, I was building Jim Farley a track, Auto Week magazine a track, Tom, who owns Reliable Trucking up here. Then as I finished up Jim's track, 2011, I got a call from a gentleman from Ford Motor Company and said, hey, is this David Beatty? And I said, yeah. He goes, hey, Jim Farley says you're the best slot car track builder in the world. I said, okay.
I'll go with that.
Yeah, I said, yeah, okay, what's going on? He goes, well, can you come down and see me? And I went down to Ford, went in this guy's office. He says, hey, we're launching Carroll Shelby. I don't know if it was a 50th anniversary. There was some GT. And can you build us a track and make us custom slot cars and such? And I said, sure, not knowing how I was going to pull this off at that kind of level that they're looking for with a nice shiny base and everything. Before I knew it, I was building Ford Motor track, and it went around to the North American Auto Show. But the real launching point would be Pebble Beach with the track. And the funny thing is, when I was flying there, I met Bob Bondurant in the airport, and he was sitting across from me. I'm looking at him like, man, you look familiar. And he goes, oh, I'm Bob Bondurant. I said, oh, I'm David Beatty. Like, who the hell am I? It was really super cool.
Well, to use a metaphor, it sounds like you came out of the last corner and just slammed the plunger into the back of the controller. You accelerated so fast with an idea that you didn't even think might even blossom. And that's absolutely incredible. And super rare, especially in the modern times in the mid 2000s with everything that's happened. And you've continued to perpetuate that over all these years. But I think we need to take a pit stop because you said you're a big fan of Formula One. So I'm not going to ask you who's your number one driver because you got Nigel Mansell on the wall behind you. But I've heard you say in other interviews that you're a big fan of WRC, which is a discipline of motorsport is near and dear to me, as many fans of the show know. So I got to ask, favorite car, driver, and/or era of World Rally?
For me, Walter Roll with the Audi, just because they were kind of out of control. But when the Lancia Stratos and all that came out, those are like Formula One rally cars, and they were just so fast. But that era when Audi really took over the racing scene as the fastest cars, those old videos of the rally racing and them racing through streets of South America, or wherever they were, cresting those hills and dropping and the pops and bangs out the exhaust. I used to come home, go on YouTube to watch it. Then I bought the Duke videos. Guys changing out the rear axle of a car on the side of the road during the middle of a race, and they didn't know what they were going to do. And then a guy came by, a casual citizen came by with the same car, and they pulled over, and the guy said, "Oh, here, you can take my rear end out of my car." And they put it in the rally car. I'm drawing a blank on the team, but I think it was a Rothman-sponsored car. So the older rallies, late 50s, early 60s, into the 70s was kind of the era that I really enjoyed. And then back in the 2000s, you used to be able to watch WRC rally racing on TV, be able to come home and see all the modern day races, Subaru and such, and then that went away. Colin McRae, unfortunate death. Do I have a favorite? Like Walter Roll, you know what I'm saying? But
yeah, that's the Group B period of rally, and then followed that up to your point, Colin McRae, and you got Marco Alain ran the Lancias, Delta HFs. That was all Group A. That was later. I digress.
For those of you who go watch the video, since you're on the rally point of this, one track he is building currently for a client that's 3 tracks, incorporates all kind of aspects of the rally, because you start on the one end, you got it up in the mountains in the snow, a bunch of different things, and it's really neat. Then he's got the middle section, which is the largest track of the 3, all your greenery and everything like that. And he incorporates a lot of these cool aspects of like the mountains, Belvedere Hotel, and everything like that. And then he's got the desert one right next to that. So it's got all 3 disciplines in essence for the rally, but the detail on it is just unbelievable in regards to what they get into and how they go about making the little pieces, like a little toolbox. On the desert one, he's got like little fire pits with little logs and everything like that, and the trees and the bush and the brush going on. I mean, just the detail that they get into on those. I highly recommend to watch the video because you'll see what they get into and how they think of every little thing to make it so realistic looking. It's amazing.
That rally track is the Dakar Rally, Eric. That's what that's based on. And the client, he actually has a brand new Dakar. He wanted that rally represented.
And I appreciate William's masterful segue into our next segment of the discussion, David. So let's talk a little bit about the design and the build process. Obviously, these are commission-based. I'm sure there's a few that brew in your head that for funsies, you probably want to put together on your own. And you're like, now what do I do with this? But William brought up how detailed the tracks are. And looking at the behind the scenes video, you can see all the different materials that you're using, some really creative ideas. So what's the build process like? Say I come to you, or actually my sister asked about this. She'd love to build a replica of VIR that would fit in her basement. What would that process be like from stem to stern?
If she said, "Hey, I'm going to build VIR," I'd say, "That's a fantastic track." We'd have a consultation call. How much space do you have? So we start out with finding the parameters that we have to work in, because we can't build something to scale because it'd have to be as big as VIR. So I call it, we build them in the spirit of. Basically, I would be talking to her, to you, about your space allowance. What era of racing did you enjoy there? Like if it's 60s. And so that would start tuning me into the time period where I'd start to do in my mind thinking, okay, I understand. At VR, it had the oak tree turn, which I just thought was beautiful. And I did incorporate that into one of my earlier tracks. I'm surprised they never put another tree there, because without it, I don't know what track that is, if you know what I mean. Basically, it goes from a consultation call, getting to know what you're looking for, what the size is, and then as I work up a pricing, I would quote you like, okay, based on the size and scenic elements, your track's going to be, let's just say $50,000. And then you would say, okay, let's move forward. I'd say, okay, I need a design deposit. And so with that, once I get that, then I sit down and I start to gather information via books that I have on racing or YouTube videos, and I'll start to doodle a spirit of track and capturing turns and such. And then I would get with my guy, Nick, who can take my doodles to the next level of doodles that William saw here, that clients can actually frame. And then I would submit that to you to say, what do you think? And on there, it would show the call outs, the grandstands, pit areas, the trees, the oak tree turn. And once you approve that part of it, then we take it to our three-dimensional drawings, more engineering to show elevations and such. And then I would present that to you for your approval. So as the client now, you're involved in the design process. It's just not this blind thing that comes out the end. You can say, I like that. I don't like that. Hey, what about this? As we get through that, once there's the final design that we're showing you in 3D that you can spin around on the tube and see like, okay, I get this, get signed off, we get our first progress payment, and then we begin the build over a 6 or 8 month build period.
Someone might have heard that number price that he's throwing out. You have to understand that basically nothing is off the shelf. Everything is made by hand, even starting with not the base what it's sitting on, but the base of the track. He starts with these solid foam blocks that can be 30, 40, 50, just with that. Then he's shaving it off. The track itself is all hand done. All the details, everything, it's all made by hand and by his guys and everything like that. Once you see how he goes about building and constructing these tracks, you get the sense of, oh, wow, okay. And you're not going to see another one like it, that's for sure. But the detail that get into it, but you can see the value that's there once you realize how this thing is built, because it's unbelievable.
And that's down all the way to the track itself. To William's point, you're not using plastic track and then building around it like some DIYers might attempt to do. You're literally carving out the grooves that the cars will run in themselves.
Yes. Thank you, William, because I appreciate when people bring me back into how I do these things, because I kind of give the cliff notes, and to the point of like the scenic elements, everything is made by hand. Everything is looked at pictures, and then we scale it down and we start making it. To the track design, once we take it from the CAD, we're able to see all the elevations. So when we CNC cut them, when we no longer hand routering them like we used to in the early days, and we did a lot of that. It's more of an engineering interactive piece of art that by the time it's done, you don't really see all the internals. You see the track and the beauty and the elevations and that miniature world that we're creating, from carving the foam to roll forming the Armco rails to painting the track surfaces. There's just a lot of man hours, structures. It's just kind of crazy. If I'm building the Nürburgring and I'm doing the main straight building, I've done that. I've done, the Monza big grandstand, but everything is thought well out and it's all made by hand. And to your point, Eric, not buying things off the shelf. It's not there, and that would be boring.
So I would assume if you had a 6-lane track, it'd be a lot harder to get the spirit of VIR or its footprint unless you had a massive amount of space. But maybe with a 2-lane track, you have a little bit more wiggle room to work in?
Absolutely. It's kind of my trademark to do 3 lanes or less, because once I do a 4-lane, I'm really trying to get the most linear feet racing length out of a track. So if I do 3, it looks to scale with the buildings and such. And 2, you can really get a lot of switchbacks and such. And with the 3s, I've been able to capture turns and make some pretty cool tracks.
So you mentioned before having the opportunity to chat with legendary drivers like Sterling Moss, and you even mentioned that you get some input and perspective when you're building these replicas from pro drivers that have driven on these circuits. Any other stories you want to share about your dealings with some of these pro drivers and their thoughts about your replica tracks?
Quick Vic Elford is a great one.
Yeah, I had this idea about doing a Porsche 917 and watching the videos and the early videos, Vic Elford racing at Le Mans, that really made an impression upon me. And so I don't know who gave me the introduction to him, but I reached out to him and I said, hey, Vic, my name's David Beatty. I'm going to do this 917. Clamshell's open and it can be seen on our site at www.slotmods.com. And he said, well, I didn't drive the Porsche Steve McQueen one, but I did drive
the long tail Martini car later.
Yeah. Number 4, Martini Rossi Racing. Vic signed it. I said, well, I can do that version too. So we agreed that, okay, he's going to let me use his name. And first it was just kind of like, I just wanted to have a business, like, hey, look, I'd like you to put your name with this car. And I said, well, by the way, what was it like racing at Le Mans? And what was it like racing at Monza? I said, I watched the video Grand Prix and I see the Monza rail. And I said, what's that like? He goes, oh, David, crazy as hell. It's as thin as aluminum foil. I forget more about what he told me, but it was just like, it was hot in the cars. You really just had to have the concentration and the focus when racing at Targa Florio. I mean, the guy raced everywhere. It was very interesting. He was a very warm gentleman. We kind of became friends and we just kind of talk about slot car tracks in real races. And from there, when Bobby Rahal commissioned a track, Bobby, he was interesting because so I got to back up here. I get an email. Hey, I'm Zach Brown. I'm interested in you building me a track. Can you come down to my place? And I'm like, who's Zach Brown? So I Google him. And at the time he had his JMI marketing, and I said, okay. We were going back and forth, and I said, well, what racetracks do you like? And he said his favorites were Indy, Le Mans, Riverside, which was one of my favorites. Even though people say, well, it's boring. I said, no, man, it's one of the coolest tracks there ever were. Zach's telling me, okay, this is what I like. And I said, well, I can fly down. My brother-in-law has a plane, built a kit plane. I helped pull some of the wires in it, so I was a little bit nervous about flying with him just because I worked on it. So what happened was there was a snowstorm here, and I called Zach and I said, hey, I can't make it. And Zach said, well, don't worry about it. I'll send you my jet. And I'm like, yeah, okay, and I just kind of blew it off. And then his assistant came back and said, yeah, please be to the Pentastar terminal at the airport. Zach's jet will pick you up at 10 a.m. So I'm like, wow, this is awesome. Who sends a jet for you? Building slot car tracks. Flew down there, Carmel, Indiana, went to Zach's beautiful home and went downstairs, and the whole house is finished. And the door he opens is this freaking bomb shelter, shit hanging from the ceiling. And it's just an unfinished room, like the builders, when they left it, wires were hanging and no drywall, just studded walls. And he goes, well, this is as much room as you got. And it was only enough room to fit like a 20 by 14 track at this weird angle. And he goes, I want you to stuff as much as you can in here. And all I want is 4 feet on this side. So I'm like, okay, so we got this really kind of funky shape. And he goes, don't worry, just build me the track. The room will be ready. I ended up building this track for him. And he had a Super Bowl party, and he had like the vice president of marketing from 7-Up and all these heavy hitters. And Bobby Rahal was there. It's like, oh, this is cool. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, Bobby Rahal, yeah, man, he's going to want a track. And Zach would talk about his friends that he was telling the track about. And there's a simulator in the next room. And I hear all these guys on it, and it's like, I'm like, what is going on? Because everyone was getting stuck against the walls, and, in those simulators, they're difficult. The next thing I know, I hear like, wah, wah, wah. It was just sounding like a symphony of shifting and braking and such. And I went and looked, and I go, wow, who's in there? And so I'm going, oh, that's Bobby Rahal. And I'm like, oh, man, this is awesome. And he was racing at Mid-Ohio. It's kind of his home track, I guess. He's from Ohio.
Probably drive it blind.
Yeah. So then I was excited now, and I was in the slot car room, the track and everything. And Bobby came in and he's like, oh my God, this thing is awesome. And he saw us guys racing around, and I better get something to eat before I buy this. And I'm like, oh, well, eat light. It was kind of like networking. And I met Bobby, and, Zach was there. He was all proud of everything. I'm driving home, and I'm kind of all out of builds. And this is kind of the ups and downs of the business world. I didn't have any tracks, in the queue. I was finishing some up, but nothing new. And all of a sudden I got this call as I'm driving back, and, it's like, hey, Dave, it's Bobby. I want you to build me a track. I said, oh, yeah, what are you interested in? And he's like, I want to Road America. Can you be in Chicago tomorrow? And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, tomorrow, man, I'm driving from Indiana to Detroit. I just want to go home, So I said,
U-turn.
how about Monday? He's like, yeah, okay. Went to his place. He had a super cool place. He gave me a bunch of stacks from his racing career of the tracks, the programs. He just gave a lot of insight into what I was building for him. And normally my tracks start out low in the front and then plateau. So you're watching the cars go up and about. And Bobby's like, no, I don't want that. I want it just like Road America, where the beginning of the track is high. And then as they go out onto the course, it goes lower. And so Bobby was able to give me a lot of insight into that. And he had a party too. And I went to that party and met Don Devine, Emerson Fittipaldi, Adrian Fernandez, I built a track for, and just people who were kind of in the racing industry for quite a while.
Wasn't Adrian the one that was like super, super particular?
Yeah. Adrian reached out to me and he said, hey, David, I'd like you to build a track. He's got a killer place, and it's on the 7th floor of this office building down in Miami. And he says, I want you to build me something very unique, and I'm very, very particular. And I thought, okay, well, everyone's kind of particular. That's okay. I talked to Zach. I said, hey, Adrian's looking to get a track. And he's like, oh, no, he's a solid guy, Basically, everyone knows Zach Brown. That's what I found out in the racing world. So Adrian and I hit it off. I made this track with drawers with leather inlays, and, you could put the cars in. It was like a big jewelry box slot car track. And this was going in his man cave, where he actually has one of his Indy cars hanging on the wall, which is super cool. we built the track and we got it done. And Adrian goes, "Thanks. I know I can be pretty particular." I said, "Oh yes, you are very particular." And he just kind of smiled, and just a great experience trying to meet their expectations as drivers and wanting to have fun. And, he just loved the slot car track. For me, sometimes I feel like, well, I kind of get bored with this, but I think I'm so close to it every day that I don't get that feeling like I did when I first saw my friend Jimmy's track. Like, man, I want to come back every day. Yeah, geez, from the racing world to the rock and roll world with Brian Setzer from the Stray Cats. He reached out to me, called me, he goes, "Yeah, man, I'm interested, in a slot car track." And I said, "Well, let me get this out of the way first. Are you Brian Setzer of these Stray Cats?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's me." So I had to go, okay. I said, "Yeah, I'm a big fan, rock this town and things." And, he went on to say about when he was younger, he and his brother used to race slot cars, and he wanted to get a track for his home studio. You get to know these guys and you're working with them over the course of the build, and then you deliver it. And, if they need things, they'll reach out to me and things like that. So building a track for Brian was really cool.
My back's starting to hurt from having to pick up all these names. Going back to the scenario that we posed there, you're building a replica of VIR. It is going to be a substantial amount of money. There's a lot of time and care and effort put into making a replica of whatever it is. Even if you're creating a fantasy track, maybe your version of National Corvette, where it's a combination of other tracks to make that test track. Is there a potential for people to go try a Slot Mods track or see one in person? Are there places that have them in public or that hold events on a Slot Mods track where somebody could basically try before they buy?
The only place that I know of, the LeMay Museum up in Washington, we built the track for them for their grand opening. So the track is still there and the public can go there. You can pay a donation of $5. You get to race on the super cool track that has parts of Road America, parts of Daytona. It's all American tracks that are on there. Right now, currently, we built a track for Hot Wheels, and it's over in Abu Dhabi at a Mission Play. It's like an indoor amusement park. So if you have the money and the means, you can go over to Abu Dhabi and race there. Unfortunately, there aren't any in a real public setting here in the States. They go in private collections, car collections that people aren't going to allow you in. Like Bobby Rahal's not going to allow you in to race at his house. And, Zach Brown, he loved his track so much when he moved to England. We moved it over there and moved it. We had to go back to England twice and move it. He got a raise or something. He went from COO to something else, general manager. Unfortunately, Eric, there's not any tracks that the public can go race on. And I think it's a shame.
I will interject, though, and I'll chalk this up to Dave's memory. Now, obviously, it's not a public place, but you can go there to the facility when they have some events. They have some events that open public get paid, but he is doing some stuff for the M1 Concourse.
Thank you, William.
That you will have the ability to test out and try, but not until the end of 2025, though, right?
That's correct. M1 Concourse X Center Experience. They're going to have 2 10 by 20 tracks, one representing all European tracks. And then the other one, which is kind of interesting, tells the history of Pontiac Triangle, where the M1 course is located.
It's super cool.
So the public will be able to go to X Center, M1 Concourse, and we'll be putting that out as we get closer to it.
Let's go back to our DIYers. Maybe we've got some slot car tracks collecting dust in a closet somewhere. I got to get back to that. I've always wanted to build something, or maybe you're getting back into the modeling hobby, right? Because that's also part of this, is like you said, not just the track layout, but the scenery and all the things that go with it. And there's a lot of very creative people out there, especially on social media, and the things that they can do with, say like Lego or with trains, and how you combine all these different mediums together and things like that. Maybe some tips and tricks from the master about what you can do with that off-the-shelf kit. It's got that patina now. And
yes,
you want to bring it out and do something with.
Well, what I would recommend is, if you really want to get back into it and you have an old track and you bring it out, in today's market, you can actually go out and buy a really nice track that's going to run, and you're not going to spend so much time getting that up to running. Carrera is very affordable and fun. Great slot car company. I have a great relationship with you. So those out there who are looking to get into the hobby, on YouTube, there's many guys out there showing their miniature modeling skills. You can go to our website and look at what we've recreated. And we don't really ever get into, there's the video, it's called Painting Coconuts, which Audi did a feature film short on me that won a Clio in the advertising world, which I didn't expect to happen. But it shows me carving foam and kind of talking about how we do things here. But when people say to me, hey, I want to get back into slot car racing, I'll say, Carrera and Scale Electric makes a really good set and you can get these online. But then I say you can lay your track out, get a 4x8 sheet of foam, outline your track shape, carve down, remove that, inset your track in there, and then start carving around the foam to get those reliefs of the berms and the side things, and then start scraping the topography. It all depends on what the person's skill level is. And, if you want to get back into the hobby and you want to pull out your old stuff, which is super cool, I collect vintage slot car sets. So I got things that still have the little trees in the box and you can set up a little grandstand, little pit building. I would suggest refurbing your own little set or looking at how to make your own set, which can be a good father and son kind of thing with the wood and the routering. By all means, just get back into the hobby. And there's a lot of information out there on YouTube about building your tracks and scenic elements.
When you started out, Jimmy was saying, well, you only got a hammer and a screwdriver. That's it for tools. What are the top 5 tools that a DIYer should have in their toolbox if they're going to build their own set?
Let's see, hand router, table saw, drills, Craig screw machine for, cutting all the supports. Well, basically, if you go out and you can go to Lowe's or Home Depot, get yourself 3/4 inch MDF, and you can make a template. And there's plenty of videos on how to make a wooden slot car track, but MDF board for the track surface. There's magnetic braid that you can get through like Professor Motor. That is the rails that'll run. You can get a transformer from Professor Motor. So you can get all these items from a slot car supplier and you can make your own track, and you can make it inexpensively. You can make your own little flat track that you put on a ping pong table. That's a great place to start. Even if you're putting the track on the ping pong table that's plastic, you need some power tools. You need a router to route all the slots. You don't really use hammers, so you use drills and power screwdrivers and that kind of stuff. And then paint it with outdoor flat latex gray or black. And then I come through with cans of Rust-Oleum and I blend colors to make it look like pavement. I made the biggest mistake when I made my track. I painted it all and Jimmy's like, oh, yeah, you got to spray it with dull coat. And I'm like, okay. And, that stuff's like death. When you spray it, it's like from the 10 Commandments when the plague came in, and, I didn't put any blood around the door. My wife came home and she's like, what the hell is that smell? It was coming up through the air ducts and it was bad. I mean, I'm glad the pilot on the water heater didn't get it, just blew at my house. But I've had people call me and say, hey, I want to make a track for myself. Can you help me? Now, listeners out there, I am all about helping people out, and I have helped people out. I've sold some tracks at cost, if not below, just because their passion for it and their situation. It isn't about the money. This is a business. I have guys I depend on. And when I first got married, my wife's like, how come you live out of the ATM? Like I had all these receipts, $20. I just said, I don't know, so she straightened me out. But sometimes it gets lost in doing podcasts and interviews that people talk about the celebrities and we talk about where I've been with the tracks and this and that. But at the end of the day, what I got out of slot car racing was I could sit down in my basement and just tune a car, and with my lap timing system, trying to shave off 1/100th of a second, 1/10 of a second, or whatever that minimal thing was, by sanding the tires, painting the front tires. Here's a trick. You paint the front tires with nail polish, so when they go around the turns, it cut back the resistance. So the hard rubber isn't pushing against the track. And so, there's just things like that the guys who really race know all these tricks. But just to be able to go down there and go, oh, yeah, I got a lower lap time. I'd spend 3 hours doing that. I'd get out of bed at 3 a.m. because I couldn't sleep, and I'd go downstairs and my wife would say, here, and I had 121-foot linear slot car track. Let me paint the picture for you. It was a Sunday morning. It was about 56 degrees out. Track conditions were slightly dusty, and I got my Rothman's 956, put it on there. Normal lap times to get around my track were like around 22 to 23 seconds. These are cars that are weighted. There's no magnets. You really had to have it tuned with silicone tires and the right magnets on there. So I spent 3 hours and I went from an average lap speed of 23 seconds to 19.87. And I was racing on the edge and the rear tires were chattering around the turns. And then when it was done, I was exhausted, but I was like, yes, because no one could ever beat that record on my track. But I spent the time sanding the tires and just really being engrossed in it. It was the greatest escape.
Well, I'm glad we went here because our last segment of the conversation was really going to be about the cars. Let's walk back just a second. You specialize in 132nd scale cars, but you also mentioned in the old days the 124th scale, but there's also the HO scale cars. So when you look at, again, the DIYer at home, maybe go into their local hobby shop and they want to buy a set off the shelf to start with just to get the foundation going, or maybe they got that vintage set in the closet. Your heart leans 132nd, but some pros and cons of the other two scales?
Pros of 124th. They look super cool. They're big. The details are really great. The cons are they're heavy. And when you're racing them, you really got to have a lot of track length. And when they go around the turns on a plastic track, they'll kind of pull the track a little bit, the weight going through a turn. And so you're always pushing the track sections together. The weight of them is mostly the con of it. Unless you're racing 124 scale, they look like a flying wedge and they're super fast. That's a whole nother level. But for the person getting back into it, I wouldn't really recommend 124 scale. I would just say I would stay away from 124th because there's not enough variety of cars available. HO, I think are great. They're a scale that, younger, I had a track, but I didn't really grow too fond of it because the cars were little. I thought they went too fast and it wasn't realistic enough. I mean, I'm going to be building my first HO track this year for a gentleman. He built this big house, course, and he's got this beautiful fireplace, and on the side of it he has this, I'll call it a table, but it's 4x8, and he wants to put a track, have us recreate his home and such in the Colorado area. I'm always up for a challenge. So we've been playing around with HO cars and everything. And I think they're really cool. They're too small and they're really fast. But I think for young kids, they can really enjoy it because they can set up a track in their bedroom and they got enough space to set up an HO track versus 132nd where you need a little bit more room and 124th where you need much more room. So each scale has its pros and cons, but 132nd, the manufacturers are just making such high quality models and the detail is just any scale, any model, race them because you're going to enjoy them.
So you mentioned your relationship with Carrera. That's only one of the brands. There's Scalextrics, there's SCX, there's Fly. There's so many out there. Are there also, just like we're talking about the track sizes, are there good, bad, and indifferent? You mentioned weighted cars versus magnetic cars. What would you suggest to a first timer or somebody coming back into the hobby? What should they be looking at? Or is there a compromise between quality and price? What's on your list when you're selecting a car, especially to race?
If I'm going to race, Slot It cars, Slot It brand. Maurizio Ferrari, who's not related to the family. He has I'll call it a boutique business, but he's one of the finest brands of slot cars in the world. And I'm talking about cars you can buy off a website. NSR makes wonderfully fast, beautiful slot cars. They're almost too fast for my tracks because mine, I call it miniature model racing, where you're going to go fast, but you're not going blistering fast. But NSR is a very fast car. And in like South America and in Europe, they'll have big races where they have 8-lane tracks. It's plastic and they race these on there. If you're going to get into the hobby and you're going to go buy a track, Carrera makes wonderful tracks that are going to last a long time. The width of the track is more to scale. The quality of the pebble finish, let's say, for traction is really good. And their magnetic downforce between the amount of steel they have in their tracks, because the cars come with magnets. All modern day slot cars come with magnets that you're buying out of the box. You can buy a track. You're going to spend maybe $140 to $250 on a Scalextrics. Scalextrics makes great cars. That's what I give with my tracks because they run great out of the box and they run really well on wood. Carrera, pros and cons, beautiful cars. The guide pins on them for a wooden track, they're too thick. And the Germans, bless their heart, they always over-engineer things. They could have left the guides alone like they were 10 years ago. But, everyone wants to keep improving. But once you have one of those tracks, you can go back to your local hobby shop, which I would prefer people do. They'll have slot cars, singular ones that you can buy, from Lolas to Mercedes to 911s to, LMP cars. From the 60s to current day models are available. And they have the same quality as a die-cast car when you're looking at it. You're not going to really get into racing with magnets unless you're really diehard and have the patience. Keep putting your car on while you learn how to take a turn at the proper speed. I can race with or without magnets, and I can be competitive with somebody on one of my tracks who has magnets and I'm running without them because I know where to let up in the turns. And
I think it's super cool. Like I geek out on this kind of stuff and I got out of the hobby. My sister's still sort of in it. Like I was saying, she wants to build VIR and stuff like that. So that's why I ask. It's like every once in a while she teases me. She's like, "Oh, I'm going to set up the track and we should come over and race like in the old days." And I'm like, that maybe I should buy a new car. What's technology now 20 plus years later? I don't know. Got to check it out.
One of the things that is new is digital racing.
Mm.
And that can be a lot of fun. And I was really against it early on when I had my Carrera set, but then Carrera, with the digital racing, you and your sister, you could buy plastic track and make a closest replica to VR as possible. But you can race 6 cars on there and do lane changing. And you can go down there and race by yourself and put on the ghost cars. You're single and you're racing around these other cars that are automatically braking. And first time I did that, I got kind of dizzy because I was watching all these cars going on. I'm controlling mine, but with the lane changing, it's really fun. And so if you have limited space and you have, let's say, a couple buddies that want to come over and race and not just stand there and watch 2 people race, the digital is they can all get into it. And I gifted my twin a track last year, went over there and I surprised him and we built this track. He's like, "I don't know what I'm doing." I go, "Just sit back and watch." And so I kept reconfiguring this thing and it was a digital track and it's just a blast. So he's in a car group. He has a 57 Chevy. He's got a Model A and he's in this group called The Taints is their car club.
Oh, Lord.
And they're all crazy bastards, but they all got super cool cars. But they go over his house and they race on Friday nights. But you can race 4 to 6 people. That's something to think about. But as far as technology, slot cars are the quality of the models. The construction is better. They operate the same. They go fast, but there's just a bigger variety of the models themselves.
But it all really comes down to the tires at the end of the day, like you were saying, right? So like my old slot cars might benefit from new rubber technology, like any old race car would. Put a brand new set of Hoosiers on it versus bias plies from the 60s is going to handle completely different without changing anything. So is the same true of the slot cars? Has the tire technology really improved?
Out of the box, the tires, when they're putting them together in China, that's basically where they come from. Unless you're getting your NSRs, and they're making them over there in Italy and they're truing the tires and everything, when you pull it out of the box, it's going to go on the track and it's going to run great. Similar to slotted. If you're getting Scalextrics and Carrera, they're being made over, in China. They're being assembled by people who aren't really passionate. Sometimes the chassis are screwed down really tight. So when I get a slot car, I'll take it apart. I'll make sure the gears are lined up and the tires are pressed. First thing I do is I get rid of the stock tires and I put on silicone tires. And you can get those from a major slot car supplier, be it Professor Motors or Electric Dreams. And that silicone will immediately give you better handling of the car, better traction through the corners, a nice round ride and such. So I take it apart. I'll super glue any of the inside pieces so nothing's rattling. Just tighten the screws. But then once I tighten them up, I'll back all the screws out. So the chassis and the body's got a little bit of a waver. So when I go through the turns, it's more like a suspension instead of just a stiff thing. So you want it to give a little bit. There is a lot of tuning that you can do to cars. You can go online and you can upgrade the motors from 20,000 RPMs to 25 to 30 to 40 red, green, blue motors, and they'll fly and they're fantastic. So it depends. You can take them out of the box and race them and have fun, or you can really get into tuning each car you get. And that's what I really got into for a long time. But now, I'll get cars and I'll give them to my slot car guy and go, "Here, tune this for me." Or I'll call, Oliver. I'll go on his site and I'll say, "Hey, I see all these cars. I want these, but I want you to put these engines in them, these tires." They'll come to me and they'll be pre-tuned and they'll be hot cars set up for me to run. Maybe that's one of the benefits I have of being the slot mods guy, but there's so much available out there for slot car enthusiasts. You can go online. I don't like to say Amazon, but you can find some stuff on Amazon, but support your local hobby dealer. Go to garage sales, go to a Facebook Marketplace and you can pick this stuff up. People are just getting rid of it. They only want $10 for it. But, once you get it home and clean it up, it's worth hundreds for yourself, the amount of enjoyment you're going to get out of it.
You've mentioned before, and even on the behind the scenes video with William, about the custom cars that you guys make. So how does that work? Because we had Rick Schad, quote unquote, the Pope of Plastic, on a while back, and he talks about the recreations that he makes and how he modifies the cars. And he he's famous for doing all sorts of very intricate and realistic recreations, especially of race cars. So are you guys basically taking, let's say, a chassis, like you just said, I'm going to Facebook Marketplace, I'm going to eBay, and I'm buying up the chassis and then building bodies on top of them? Are you building your own forms? Are you taking other sets apart? Like, what constitutes a custom slot car?
For what we do, when I say like we do custom slot cars, when we did the Audi project, they were launching the A4, A7. Those didn't exist in a slot car. So we had those 3D printed, and we were able to buy chassis that had adjustable spacing from the front to the back tire. There's screws, and you can lengthen the chassis or close it in to fit within the wheel wells. So what we're doing here, like we made 100 Fiat, what is that little Fiat?
The 500 Cinquecento?
Yeah. So we made 100 of those for when we did the Lingato Fiat factory and the cars were racing on the roof. But basically what we're doing for those, we got sneaky, I'll call it sneaky. We got 1/43rd scale bodies, and we printed the Fiat bodies because then they look to scale and they fit on those cars. You know, I have a guy here, Nick, who's wonderful, and he's got a great head of hair, right, William?
That guy's got the best hair. You got to see it in the video. It's outstanding.
Yeah. But basically what we're doing, like we'll take a real world car or a slot car, and Nick can design it in 3D CAD and everything, and then we'll 3D print it, and then we'll fit it up to a chassis that is adjustable. That's the extent versus the super talented guys that can modify cars and just call it hand weld brass chassis, where there's all these lines and everything. And I'm like, how did you do this? And they're miniature works of art. I mean, they really are. We don't tend to get into that. When I say, oh, we do custom slot cars, we've done slot car shopping carts, you know, and they raced around the track. And we've done Mercedes vans. We've done the Fiats. And right now, William was here, and the project we're working on, we're going to be making custom Gammon Porsche 356 slot cars. We're going to be designing those right from Nick's head, like looking at the math and making those and possibly 3D printing the chassis. So that's going to be a little bit more into pushing us beyond what we're normally doing and kind of kit bashing, but using the 3D printing. 3D printing's come a long way. And so that's kind of what we do on the custom end. But there's guys out there that are just building phenomenal slot cars. You don't even want to race them. I mean, they're that beautiful in the amount of detail.
So we've talked about tips and tricks for building the tracks, for acquiring your cars and tires and things like that. But I guess the last piece is some of us get frustrated. Like you said, there's that patience factor. You're there for 3 hours trying to set your best lap time on the track with your timers and all that. When you get back into the hobby again, what are some ways to not fly off the track? Are there exercises you got to do with your finger, your trigger finger? Like, what are some of your tips and tricks for being a better racer and enjoying the experience of slot car racing more, especially if you're getting back into it or getting into it for the first time?
I always say, pretend you're in the car and you wouldn't go into a turn at full speed. So throttle control on the trigger, that's your gas pedal. You know, go around slowly, but then as you start to build confidence, know to let up before you go into a turn like 2 feet or 1 feet into it so you can flow through the apex. It's more about start out slow, then build up your confidence level, because people say, man, when I had a slot car track, they always went off in the first turn. It's like, well, you don't squeeze it. You got to, again, put yourself in the car and think about how you would be braking and actually driving. If you got young children, and what we do, we send these tracks out to shows. You can buy magnets attached to the bottom of the car, which give you really good downforce. You can put magnets on there that are so strong, I can pull 12 volts full power and it will never come off. It's a business. You know, but I like it to be a little bit of a challenge that, you know, there's a consequence. You need to learn how to drive. Start off slowly, pretend you're in the car, and just build up your feel for it.
It's sort of like when you get on the track, you got to warm up your tires, your brakes, and your brain.
Exactly. You know, I was out at Thermal Raceway. I don't know if you're familiar with the Thermal Club. You know, they take you around a few times. We're in BMWs, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I got this. And the lead driver, you're following me saying, David, get off my ass, you know, because I'm kind of competitive. And I'm not a race car driver or anything like that. So then they let you have your own track time. And I was getting real confident. And I came up over this crest and I went into these S's. And I just came over too hot and I started going off in the gravel. It scared the shit out of me. And then I was like, whoa. I didn't like automatically think about slot car racing, but it was just kind of like follow the lines, you know, in the apex and everything and build up your confidence. And then you can really turn in some hot laps just by getting to work the controller. Just be patient, enjoy it. It's fun. People love to crash. You know, that's one thing I found out. Not the guys on the race nights. They don't like to crash because they got their really nice cars and stuff, but it's fun. It's a hobby. Guys take it real serious. That's fine too. There's those groups. I say get kids started young with a small track and then get them involved and get them on a bigger track and turn them on to videos on YouTube. Or, we don't make enough videos. We're too busy building these tracks.
So, Dave, what's next for Slot Mods?
Well, currently right now I'm deciding to release these new half-scale Porsche 917s. They're art cars, which would be a fiberglass shell, which would be airbrushed, hand-painted with rubber wheels and everything. And it would be similar to the 917 that we did. You flip a latch, the track opens up, and then there's a miniature Le Mans Raceway in there in 1/43rd scale. Instead of on 1/32nd, you could actually have in your office, thing would be about 5 feet long, or maybe 7 feet long, 3 feet wide, 917 that opens up and it's got a miniature raceway in it, and you can race slot cars. And when you're not racing it, you just click a button and it closes. Looking to bring to market in 2025. There'll be limited editions. There'll be the Steve McQueen number 20, the winning Salzburg Porsche, the red with the white livery. We can talk rally, but I just got commissioned to build one of my largest builds, which is the recreation of Targa Florio and Miglia. It's going to be pretty incredible with those Italian villages and stuff, and it's quite a project. And the gentleman says to me, I want you to make your build of a lifetime, your most magnificent, and I said, well, this is the price. He goes, oh, I wasn't thinking it would be that much. And I said, well, we can take things away. And he goes, oh, no, I want it all. And I'm like, okay, so call it salesmanship, but there has to be a limit because we only have so much time to build these. And we want to make each one special. And that takes a lot out of me as an artist to make sure that it looks right. And it's not that I'm just mailing it in, because people are making a big investment in me and with my guys. And we really do want to deliver and bring a lot of happiness to people and joy.
We've reached that point of the episode where I like to ask our guests to share any shout out promotions or anything else we haven't covered thus far.
Dave left out something there in the beginning when he was kind of getting going and starting this. Tabletop hockey games he builds. Not just talking these little chinky, tin metal things. Primo. I mean, outstanding. He's got his little thing, it's this lot, but he does some other things too, and got an unbelievable collection of old stuff sitting up in his rafters too at his shop. But the one funny thing was, you were walking through, went in the back, you would think that as busy as all these different projects going on, because me and him talked about this, he's at the front, he's at the middle, and he's at the end of the whole process, wearing all these different hats, so to speak. But he finds the time to go do his own thing. He's building his own little track for himself. He's like, I'm just doing this for me. Really neat. You can see the passion there that he still has for this, and this is the enjoyment. He's like, this is mine. I'm building this for myself. It's fantastic to see what he puts into it. And it's going to be really cool to see technology advances, whatnot. New techniques, everything like that. But it gets better and better and better. I can't wait to see what comes up out in like 5 years, what he's going to be able to come out with, because it's going to be unbelievable.
Well, thank you, William. And tabletop hockey was a real passion of mine from a childhood. And Eric, I have over 200 vintage tabletop hockey games just above my head. And it inspired me to build my own custom tabletop hockey. And I kind of did it out of spite because a guy in New York sold me a game and he sent it with it cracked and I wanted my money. And he's like, well, you wanted me to rush it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll show you. And I'm not boasting. I built my games and it got to be the gift of the year in Cigar Aficionado. I printed out the article and I sent it to him on a Christmas card. And it was like,
yeah, here you go, buddy.
Anger can really kind of motivate me. But, it's kind of funny because the tabletop hockey as a kid and racing slot cars and Christmas morning, it's all those kinds of things that I enjoy. And, the business side of it, it can take the shine off of what we do. But then when we deliver these things to people and their eyes light up and, there's a gentleman, we built him Summit Point Raceway and he raced his 911 there and we built this for him and he was over the moon. He's like, yeah, all my buddies come over. We race now every Thursday night and they bring their wives. And when I heard that, it made me feel so good. And then they sent me a Summit Point t-shirt and you bring these things into people's lives because they're not watching TV, they're having fun with their friends and they're racing. And, it's just like you setting up the track with your sister. I mean, I think you should do it. I think you should come to Detroit. You and William should come up when we get these 3 massive tracks done. But other than that, we're really busy with just building these really incredible one-offs for clients. And for the listeners out there in 2025, William and I are going to work together in bringing a track for a donation to raise some funds for his charities, a charity of his choice, because I'm at a point where I really want to give back in any way I can. And that's pretty much what's going on.
David's creations have been featured in publications across the globe, including Car and Driver, Sports Illustrated, and CNBC. And he has made appearances on Jay Leno's Garage, The Today Show, Discovery Channel, the BBC, Galileo, and multiple enthusiast podcasts, including this one. Inspired by legendary circuits from around the world, Slot Mods creates wooden 1/32 scale mega tracks. And every inch of these raceways, from the corkscrews to the chicanes, from the paddocks to the pits, right down to the mounting bolts on the aluminum guardrails, is handmade with incredible precision and built to withstand years of intense racing. If you'd like to get your very own bespoke slot car track, be sure to check out www.slotmods.com and learn more, or follow them on social at slot_mods_raceways on Instagram and YouTube, at Slot Mods Raceways on Facebook, and you can also connect with David via LinkedIn. And with that, David, I can't thank you enough for coming on Break Fix and reigniting a passion for many of us, collecting patina in a corner somewhere, going, man, I got to bust that slot car track out and turn some laps again. It's a great way to introduce a younger crowd of petrol heads into the many disciplines of motorsport that we all enjoy. And I'm all for perpetuating the continuation of motorsports out there in the world. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for being a unique part of the autosphere.
Well, thank you, Eric and William, for having me on. Sometimes I think that everyone knows about slot cars, so a show like this helps reintroduce to people who maybe forgot that they can get back into the hobby of slot cars and they can do something with their kid while the kid's plugged in on the couch to Nintendo. From my experience, all little kids love to race slot cars with each other and with their parents. So it's really a great interaction, be it the plastic track, be it a slot mods track. What you guys are doing is amazing for hobbyists, not only in the slot cars, but your other followers and interest in shows that you've shared.
I feel like a kid again. I love it.
Yeah.
Right on. Thanks for having me on.
We hope you enjoyed another awesome episode of Break Fix Podcast, brought to you by Grand Touring Motorsports. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or get involved, be sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Grand Touring Motorsports. And if you'd like to learn more about the content of this episode, be sure to check out the follow-on article at gtmotorsports.org. We remain a commercial-free and no annual fees organization through our sponsors, but also through the generous support of our fans, families, and friends through Patreon. For as little as $2.50 a month, you can get access to more behind-the-scenes action, additional pit stop minisodes, and other VIP goodies, as well as keeping our team of creators fed on their strict diet of Fig Newtons, gummy bears, and Monster. So consider signing up for Patreon today at www.patreon.com/GT Motorsports. And remember, without you, none of this would be possible.